Colby Ryan interviewed his mother, Lori Vallow Daybell, and he wanted to get answers as to what happened to his siblings. Lori gave him some answers, but y'all, it ain't right, okay? We're gonna talk about the interview in today's video. Hello everybody and welcome back to the sofa. The sofa's not here because, well, we're not there. We're traveling, we're at a friend's house. We do have the little doggies here. At least Luke is here. His brother Bo is hanging out with the big dogs and they're traveling around in the truck because everybody was so noisy we had to refilm multiple times. Everybody was being so acting like dogs, right? What we're going to be doing today is this. First and foremost, I want to say we are going to be revisiting the Lori Vallow Daybell Chad Daybell case. Specifically, what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at Colby Ryan's. We're not going to be looking at it, we're going to be talking about it. Colby Ryan is Lori Daybell's son, and Colby Ryan's siblings were victims of Lori, her children, his siblings. Now, what has taken place is Colby, and he says this is the first time in 4 years he's spoken to his mother, since everything went down, right? So he's asking her, the hard-hitting questions. What happened to my siblings? Confronting her about information that she has said, and calling her out on her, let's be honest, BS, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to link his video down below. He has his own podcast. He has his own YouTube channel. And I beg you to, number one, listen to this actual interview. I'm going to be talking about and whatnot for my notes. But subscribe to his channel. Listen to his videos. He has a lot to say. He has a lot to offer. And I think he's a very brave man. Number one, for what he's gone through and whatnot, obviously, right? But also through the journey that he's traveled, the lessons that he's learned, and calling, his mother up and trying to get these really difficult answers. When I was watching this, I was like, I can't imagine having this conversation with my mother. A flood of emotions that had to be going through his mind and heart, body and soul, right? And you can see on his face, this is one reason why you need to listen to the whole thing. And I'm just going to talk about some highlights in it. But as you're watching this take place, his video of the interview, you can see the looks, the emotions on his face, and literally they match most likely the way you're going to be feeling, right? Because as we get into even some of the first things she said, this literal level of just disgust washed over me. It's almost like at times you can see that in his face. Now, of course, I don't know that. He didn't say that. I don't know him. I don't talk to him, but it's just my interpretation of what I see there, right? So the way we'll do the video is this. I literally just made notes as I listened to it, and I just want to talk about some of these and go over them. Now, before I do that, keep in mind, if you're new here, then you already know, but if you're not, I like to always say this, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a therapist, ain't none of that fancy credentialed stuff, okay? Only credentials up in here is the sofa and some sass, and the sofa's back home right now, so all we've got to deal with is some sass. But in all honesty and all seriousness, I'm none of those things. I just literally am making commentary and opinions on very public information, and that's it. So just do with that what you will. Now, what I want to do is just start right off. Now, like I said in the very beginning, he said he hasn't talked to his mother in 4 years. Again, Lori is serving, this is his mother, multiple life sentences for her involvement in the deaths of her children, Tylee and JJ, as well as Chad Daybell's, her husband who's in prison now for the same crimes, and more, for conspiring to take out his wife Tammy Daybell. Now, they both still face charges and other things as well. So there's other cases coming down the pipeline. This is not done yet, right? So that's the very quick version of who we're dealing with here. If you are completely unfamiliar with this is a years long case, okay? So it's absolutely next level. It's one of the most insane, angering, heartbreaking cases I've ever seen in my life. So it's one of those things where you would just have to, kind of just, this is almost a companion piece type video. This is on the assumption that you know the case. And so we're talking about this, you've seen the video, that type thing, right? But even if you haven't, you just want to hear me talk about it, we'll go for it. So all that being said now, let's get into it. So Lori begins this off by talking to Colby, and she's like, I want to talk about this whole thing you said about Tylee coming to visit you. And she's talking about obviously in the afterlife, or, like a spirit coming and whatnot. Colby is sitting here and he's like, you know what, I don't really have a memory of that or whatever. And he's like, I don't believe in ancestors visiting anymore. And Lori's like, well, Tylee visited me, and you know what she said? You know, one of the first things she said was, Mom, I'm sorry for being such a brat. And this is what I'm talking about, where I was like, how? What? And you can see the look on Colby's face, and when things like this come from his mom's mouth, you can literally see the look on his face, right? The same thing you're probably feeling like, she said that? Yeah, she said it. And it only goes downhill from there, okay? I'm just going to refer back to my notes again. So they talk about beliefs, and Lori mentions this car trip to Reno, I guess, that her and Colby had taken. And Colby's like, yeah, you told me a lot of out there stuff. And he's like, I don't believe in these multiple probations. Now, remember, this component to this case is this extreme religious beliefs that Lori has, and Chad too as well. You know, in the dynamic of, you know, allegedly Lori has been diagnosed with official things in this like kind of delusional landscape that she lives in, right? So when you hear me talk about some of these things, multiple probations and zombies and things like that, if you're not familiar with it, this is kind of the rabbit hole that goes down, okay? Just these very extreme, bizarre religious beliefs, which are at the center of this. So, you know, Colby's like, I don't believe in these multiple probations. And Lori's like, you know, I can respect that. And then at another point in that, she's like, you know, my info comes from Jesus Christ to me. Now, we'll hear her go on and on about this. We've heard her go on about this. She's got a direct damn pipeline, a damn portal to Jesus Christ and all his disciples, I guess, okay? It's the most infuriating thing ever, especially knowing the context of what she's done. Now, I'm just going to scroll down to my notes here, and I have my notes in here in front of me, so that's why I'm kind of viewing this way. Colby will circle back around to Tylee, the vision, speaking to her, all this type of stuff. And Lori, they get into the conversation of zombies. And Lori will say that the zombie thing was like blown up, way out of proportion, taken out of context. And that's not something she ever said. And she says she does believe in evil spirits and that she can cast them out. Now, again, if you remember, they talked about these castings, Zalima, Melanie, and all these people were like, so-and-so had an evil spirit, and yeah, we were going to do a casting. Okay, whatever. Well, there's talk of zombies and the scale of light and dark and this and that and blah, 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 blah. So the fact that she's trying to sit here and say, oh, I never, no, what zombies? Girl, no. Absolutely not. It's too late for that, right? Then Colby gets into the conversation of what really happened to his brother and sister. And he's basically like saying, like, look, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to open this up. I want to give you the floor. I want you to be able to say, you know, obviously you haven't been able to talk and whatnot. She never really said during court. If you watch the case, you know that even when she was sentenced, she gave this whole speech absolving herself of any responsibility, but with no real reason as to what happened, okay? She goes into this talking about it's different than everyone thinks. And then she basically is trying to, in my opinion, like gaslight it, where she's like, I don't know if you want this in the public forum, you know? And then she says this, which is very interesting to me. She's like, you know, Colby, you were the only other person who loved Tylee and JJ as much as, you know, she did, Lori did. And she'll say this numerous times throughout this phone call. And to me, and I'm curious what you think, to me, it was in this context of almost being like code in the way she was doing that to get back at Kay and Larry, like if they're listening type thing. Kay and Larry were JJ's grandparents. They loved him. Really, honestly, they're responsible for really the beginning of where are the children? Something's not right. We're trying to get a hold of them and piecing together a lot of this like next level stuff, okay? And they have been there through this, right? I mean, it gives me goosebumps talking about them. I think that we already know that Lori doesn't like Kay and Larry, right? Especially Kay, right? She's very jealous, very upset that they got the money, all this stuff, right? So to me, it feels like that. Now, obviously, am I trying to sit here and say that she's lying, that Colby doesn't love the kids? We know he loves them, right? More than Lori did, okay? I mean, that's obvious. So I'm not trying to say that at all, but I think there's an undertone of that from Lori. Let's keep going. Now, Colby will kind of circle back around and he'll be like, well, look, about what took place. You know, you said that no one's life was ever taken intentionally, that there were unalivings, you know, accidental deaths, overdoses, all this kind of stuff, right? Anything but what happened. And Lori says and tells him, I wrote out what happened in those 38 pages and I wanted you to get that information. I don't know if anyone ever got that or whatever, but I would be very curious if that ever made it to the public eyes or if she's making that up as to what that says. Now, she keeps going on about Colby Colby being the only person who loved the kids. This is another note that I put. We already covered that. But it's something that she just keeps reiterating. Now, Lori says that she can't tell the story, and this is about what took place, without telling Tylee's life, and she doesn't want to put her life out in public. And then she's like, but you know, Colby, you know how she, like, what was going on with her and this type thing. And so these insinuations that are coming through there, you just, you know, again, you're like, right? So then Colby will give her a dose of reality, and he's like describing the condition of their remains, his brother and sister, how they were found. And it's very grotesque. You know, only remnants of Tylee were left. You know, JJ was found with, I mean, we'll get into it, but, you know, with a bag on his head and buried and all these things. And Lori's like, well, do you know what that is? And talking about Tylee, you know, his sister and the just remnants being left over. And Lori's like, you know, Tylee wanted to be cremated. And this is another part where literally you can see it on Colby's face. God bless the man. And you're watching this and you're just like, oh my, like, what? Are you kidding me? Okay. Why would you even say that? Well, she goes in to talk about how, you know, at one point in time, when a conversation came up or whatever, and Tylee's like, well, I want to be cremated. And she does this in the context where you're almost like, to me, it comes off like, almost like, it's like, so see, we gave her we did her a favor. It literally, like, it's so difficult to get from here to there with the logic that you hear Lori trying to spew, because it's, I mean, a lot of it's just either a lie or a delusion, right? I mean, it's so far out there. And the fact that she's saying all this stuff about her daughter, you're just like, what? You know, and you're saying this to your son about his sibling. I just, it's mind-boggling, okay? Now, this is when then Lori will go into, you know, Tylee wasn't, you know, her life wasn't taken, she wasn't murdered. She'll say, can you imagine coming in and finding your two kids deceased? Because Colby's a father now too. And Colby's like, you know, okay, well, what happened, right? So then Lori starts recounting this whole evening, this infamous evening about when she walked in. So then Lori will go back to that infamous weekend. Now, this is when Melanie Gibb was staying with her. They were doing the podcast, all this type of stuff. Now, Lori will talk about how much, you know, Tylee hated Melanie Gibb. And I was like, you know, Melanie Gibb's just punching air over that, right? So she talks about how much, you know, that whole vibe was going on, right? She talks about the night that Lori had asked Tylee, that night they were recording the podcast, Lori had asked Tylee to babysit JJ. Now remember, JJ's young, he was on the spectrum, he was very boisterous, this type thing, right? So that's going on. And Melanie has talked about this dynamic, although if you listen to testimony from that evening of other people, that part, it's like, but people had already said they hadn't seen the kids. It's so bizarre to me, that dynamic of it, that she's even trying to say this. But anyways, I digress. Okay, so she says that, you know, she had them babysitting, whatever. So then Lori says, when I came in on that scene, so she kind of jumps in time to, okay, now we, you know, they're babysitting all this too. I come in on the scene and this is taking place. You know, she says, and I'll refer to my notes here, you know, I came in on that scene and they were gone. And she thought that Tylee had done it to get back at her. So meaning Lori thought Tylee had done whatever she's saying had taken place there to get back at her for like whatever reason, for it. Maybe she was mad because they were babysitting, whatever. Remember, she's already insinuated that stuff was going on, like, Colby, you know, and that almost like this was just the next logical thing in that, you know, whatever was going on in the step process of whatever Lori's claiming that would take place of, oh, well, and here we are now. Now, the next part will absolutely send you. Lori's like, I thought that the reason Tylee came to visit me soon thereafter was to let me know that it wasn't her fault, like to let her know that it wasn't Lori's fault, because she kept blaming herself. Literally, and this is one of those parts where you can see Colby, and I mean, literally, when you hear Lori saying this, you're like, okay, wait a minute. Not only did you do all this, but now you're trying to say that Tylee came back to comfort you so that you wouldn't feel bad that it was your fault. The immediate pivoting everything to make herself a victim and a martyr is literally, I don't know if I've seen anything more insane than Lori's level of that, okay? It takes the cake. Now I'm just going to read these kind of bullet point notes that I put here. So Colby's like, you know, you're saying that Tylee took JJ's life in her own. And Lori's like, on accident. And Colby's like, so then, okay, so they were shot, cremated, like all this stuff. Like, what do we say about this? Here's where Lori seems to be at a little bit of a loss for words. Now, one thing that's going on is, remember, she's calling from prison or wherever she's at. The call quality is very crappy. It goes in and out. So, I think conveniently is sometimes, meaning Lori says, I wasn't aware of what happened to them after she left that scene. Lori says their spirits are gone from their bodies at that time and they were already in heaven. Now pause right there for a second, because this part I was like, huh. Of course, it's in Lori's best interest on multiple levels to say that she doesn't know what happened or to make something up. Now, we can all kind of put two and two together and figure out that Chad and Alex had direct hands on whatever took place, right? It almost makes me wonder, and y'all tell me what you think about this part, where Lori's like, I didn't have anything to do with it after that, if she is telling some shred of truth in that. Because in my mind, I'm almost like, and not saying like what took place, that like Tylee did that or anything like that, but thinking in the context of what part of this could possibly be true. And is it that she saw their bodies and then Chad was like, we'll handle it from here? And sadly, in Chad's demented world, I'm like, I can 100% see that man talking about, well, we did Tylee a favor, we recremated her. That was the least we could do for her. Because, again, if you know, right? He used to be a cemetery sexton or whatever you call them. This man has no respect for life or the afterlife or anything, okay? So I was like, I could see that playing out. And I truly wonder if Lori was like, oh, okay, well, this is here, here I go on my way. I don't want to know what takes place now. You know what I'm saying? So, because I feel like some of the stuff she's saying, there's like a shred of truth. And then obviously trying to paint herself in the best picture possible. Okay, let's keep going. Colby then brings up a good point where he's like, well, then what's the point for secrecy? Why not just tell us? Because it's like, okay, you walk on the scene, this bad thing happens. Why not? I mean, why? Like at this point, why not tell us this? And Lori's like, there's so many things, okay? And then Lori's like, at the time, she didn't want anyone to know what she'd done. What I mean by this, I'm reading my notes, is at the time, Lori didn't want anyone to know what Tylee had done to JJ. And she just wanted to protect Tylee. Lori has this theory basically that, okay, well, Tylee knew that we were trying to do the podcast, and what if she was holding JJ down for too long, trying to keep him quiet, and that's how he died. So there's that part. So that whole train of logic there, you're just like, what? Like, that's it. We've seen this time and time again. How many cases do we see where they pull this number? Chris Watts talking about Shanann did it. Numerous cases like this. So now it's like a go-to. So now Lori's talking about, I walked in and Tylee had done this and taken her life. Seriously? The fact that she would run those little babies' names through the mud like that after the fact of what they did, I shouldn't be surprised. I'm correcting myself. Why am I even surprised at that? Honestly, why am I surprised? It is what it is. And again, I circle back to this. I'm putting my phone down. Colby is sitting here listening to his mother say these things. Can you imagine the gravity of what that would feel like? She wasn't always this way. Even like Kay, Larry, all these people who knew Lori are like, she wasn't always this way. Like this is like, we don't know what took place, right? But this was, she was, I hate using the word, but normal at a certain point. So Colby knew some form of normalcy at some point with his mother, like whatever their normal was, right? Not this world that they're in now. So to sit there and be listening to your mother talk this way about your siblings, and that you're just like, what? I mean, that's where I'm just like, he's so brave for doing this. Now then Lori goes into another little rabbit hole talking about, all these medications that Tylee was on, this, that, and the other. And that 2 weeks before this incident happened, Tylee decided to stop taking them. And Lori's like telling her, Tylee, you can't just stop taking the meds. You can't just do that. And again, I'm just sitting here like, you don't want to run her name through the mud. But my God, I mean, we sure are putting everything out there now, aren't we? I'm not saying that about Colby, but Lori herself, because again, I'm looking at this through the lens of, I feel like she was saying a lot of this stuff knowing this would be public information. You know what I'm saying? Let's keep going. Lori says this is why she didn't testify in order to protect Tylee. Can't roll my damn eyes hard enough. Colby says he talked to the prosecutors and talks about how decimated the bodies were. And that's the thing. I can't imagine, even just the fact of like, if you like see that all this took place and you found out that your parent murdered your siblings, let's see the bodies where it doesn't matter, all this type of stuff. Then when you get into the level of what took place, I mean, they're in Chad Daybell's backyard, okay? It's this whole other level of just zero bounds. It's just like, you did what to their bodies? I mean, it's awful. Then Lori, I guess, trying to comfort him maybe, is like, well, in my own experience of being around my body, I can tell you that no one cares what happens to your body after death. Like, so they were good, I guess. Colby doesn't even want to hear this, I wrote, and he talks about how brutal it was, and Lori just keeps trying to say that their spirits weren't in the body. I mean, again, if that's her way of comforting, okay, but yikes, right? And again, it's like, you just don't want to hear this, because at the end of the day, if you take Colby and you look at this normalcy that he presents and like what you expect emotion to be and whatnot, and then you listen to Lori, and it's just so bizarre. She's just still so far out there with this stuff, and you're just like, what am I listening to? Colby will keep challenging Lori on these things and be like, well, look, the evidence shows this and this and that and the other. And, Lori's just like, that's not the case. That wasn't how they were when I found these. And she said precious babies at one point. And again, it's not my place. I feel bad when I sit here and I'm like, I can't believe that, whatever. This isn't my mother. This isn't my family. These weren't my siblings. I get that, right? So I was like, who am I to sit here and say, well, how dare she say that? You know what I'm saying? But it's how I feel initially. Just like in the very beginning of the video when she's like, Tylee came to visit me to say I'm sorry for being such a brat. My first reaction is, how dare she? She doesn't get to say that, right? And calling them, precious babies and I love them, and you don't get to say that. You're the reason they're not here, okay? And this isn't like freak accident happened, oh my god, I can't live with myself, I fell asleep at the wheel and my kids died in a car wreck, but I lived. That would be tragic enough in itself and painful, but this is a whole other level that we're dealing with. So I'm like, yeah, you don't get to come back talking about them in this way. It's very infuriating to me. So I can't imagine how somebody would feel like Colby, like Kay, like Larry, like all these people, related to them in that scenario, that knew these children, that knew these victims, that loved and cared about them. Now they'll go on this banter, back and forth and this kind of thing and whatnot, and talking and questioning, and Colby will just call her out, and he's like, I don't believe this. And Lori's like, when you get to heaven, you're gonna know. You're gonna know. And she's been saying this, right, throughout the whole thing. It's like, that's her go-to. Now, Lori will then go into a huge religious rant, I wrote, and it ends with, this is a personal attack by Lucifer on her family because Jesus asked her to do a job, like personally. And she even says that because of this, and because Colby is her son, that he is being attacked. This is where they have completely different belief systems and relationships with religion, with Jesus Christ, with all these type of things. And Colby will tell her this. And this is where, she's just kind of gaslighting it, and it just, that's the kind of gaslighting that really just pisses me off when they take this holier than thou. And it's like, you're talking to someone who's responsible for taking the life of two people or multiple people at this point, but they're trying to gaslight you and thinking that you're the problem. And it's like, oh, no, wait, how did we get off at this stop on the train? Circle back, because we ain't doing this, okay? Now, even when Colby speaks logic to her, doesn't believe her, all this type of stuff, she digs her heels in. Like, the more they go, the more she digs her heels in. She's just basically like, you know what, you don't really know my beliefs. I mean, it's almost like this, you don't really know me. You'll see one day. The whole thing she keeps saying about this whole case, you'll see. What are we gonna see? We've already seen enough. You know what I'm saying? Colby then says at one point, he's like, that she was beyond deceived. And you can tell, I'm talking, those words cut her like a dagger. This is what's sad. It's that kind of stuff that we see emotion out of her over, not the children that she put in the ground. That's the part, and we get some fake emotion, but this is the stuff that gets to her, right? And so he, says the thing about her being deceived. And then Lori's like, do you think after standing in a room with Jesus Christ that I could be deceived? You can tell that she thinks of herself very highly, very otherworldly, very better than, very religiously gifted. So she will basically keep sitting here saying it's Lucifer trying to make her life miserable. Okay, so here's another thing. Lori will try and bring his child into and talk about Colby and saying like, oh, they came to visit me the night before they were born, and they were like, look, even though dad's not gonna let me have a relationship with you, you're still my grandmother, and this, that, and the other. And I mean, I was like, oh, he's gonna come up over this the podcast table right here. He's going to come over the podcast table, because that, I would imagine, again, I'm projecting my interpretation of my own feelings with that onto him when I say this. But like, if I was in that situation, I would be like, oh, why would you ever deserve to see your grandchild after what you did to your kids, my siblings? You know what I'm saying? How dare you think you have access? How dare you try to take that away? Like, well, she came to visit me and she said, even though Dad's not going to run. That part to me, it was just so gross. So gross. Because I don't know if she's really, again, this is the part where I'm like, there's no way she's really seeing that, like, right? Like, this has to be manipulative. But who knows? I mean, maybe she really thinks that happened. But my word, can you imagine the frustration? And again, here's the other thing. Here's Colby starting his family. You know, and he even talks about that, where it's like, I was hoping to have this and that, and, you know, family from both sides and this, that, and the other. I mean, decimated. And she wants to sit here talking about, oh, I'm going to still be able to, you know, she came to visit me, and no, absolutely not. Now, then she starts going on, so they start kind of getting towards the end. There's a lot of, like, jump cuts in it, so it sounded like it was getting kind of, like, tricky or whatever with the recording. But she keeps saying, like, she's praying for him every day, and da-da-da-da-da. And it's that kind of gaslighting that really just cooks my grits. Because, you know, it's like he's the issue. Again, like, he needs to be prayed for, you know, and you're just like, oh, what? No. Mm-mm. So he closes out and says that she cannot be part of his children's lives. 100%. Absolutely. Hallelujah. I'm sorry he has to make that decision. But obviously it's the right one, right? I mean, you just could never try. I mean, I get it would be through, like, you know, plexiglass or whatever that is. But nonetheless, the trauma of that, because here's the thing. At a certain point, those kids are going to be curious. Imagine, I'm not trying to sit here and say one murder is better than the other or whatever, or type. But think of like a normal, like, regular, just old, someone in the family did something and grabbed a gun and killed somebody else. There's none of this bizarre component. There's none of this macabre, however you say that, component to it. The craziness, I mean, this made, I want to say, like, international headlines, okay? So, I mean, imagine what that's going to be like for the upcoming children, you know, in the family. I mean, it's going to be affected by it for generations. Towards the end, I'm just reading my notes directly. She keeps going on about her mission, her being a victim, crying, asking Colby to pray about the situation. And she's saying that there's nothing more she could do differently. It wasn't her choice. And listening to that, I'm like, so there's nothing else you could have done. It was choices that you made, and in retaliation, whatever, the spirits, Lucifer, whatever, is coming to get you and take your family away, punishing you. What I took from this phone call, those are all the notes I put on there. A huge takeaway was this. Number one, Tylee did not do what she said. Shame on her, double whammy for even saying that. It's like, after all this, now we're still going to do that? Seriously? No. Number one, took that away. Number two, Colby, very brave man. Amazing that he asked her these questions. He has been forced to now make very tough decisions, because then essentially he's also lost his mother. You know what I'm saying? Not only his siblings. The amount of devastation and loss to the survivors is insane, right? Absolutely insane. Now, the fact that Lori, and this is a huge takeaway, she is still central to this. The world gravitates to her and her world. This whole thing of, you know, there was no other choice. I couldn't have done things differently. I couldn't have done things this. It's like, she's oblivious. If she really is diagnosed with whatever conditions, is delusional, whatever, I mean, it would seem like it, right? It would seem like it. This level of, oh, well, I'm saying this to cover up for Tylee because I don't want her stuff to be out there. To me, I'm like, no, absolutely not. You know what you're talking about. You know what you're doing. You know, yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow. And again, like I said, I mean, this is not my mother. This is not my family. I can only imagine what people like Colby and others are feeling. So on that note, I'm very curious to see what you think. If you watch the whole interview, I'm very curious what do you think about it? I mean, what did you think when she starts talking about, yeah, I walked in and Tylee had done this, and so the next logical thing to do is what we did with their remains. I mean, that's the thing that these people don't, when I say these people like Lori who committed these crimes, that they don't think through, or that they somehow convince themselves like, oh yeah, this sounds legit. Who even does that? Oh no, I didn't want to put her out there, so I just, yeah, I didn't know what else happened after that. You've seen the evidence. Okay, so it doesn't make sense, right? It's almost like the lie is so bad that you're just like, are you joking? Like, are you really trying to tell this man this? No, absolutely not. God bless him. I mean, I can't. So anyways, I could go on and on about this, right? I mean, I just was listening to this in multiple places, like in the car like this, like, I mean, just mouth on the floor at some of the stuff that was coming out of her mouth. So let me know what you think down in the comment section. If you're still watching, well, I appreciate it. It's a little bit of a longer one, I think. I can't tell. We had to re-record this a couple of times because these little monsters were over here doing everything they could to make noise in the background, but now they're sleeping, so it all worked out. But let me know what you think. Make sure to give Colby's channel a follow, check out his stuff there, and that's it. I do appreciate you. I hope you're doing well, and until we get together next week for Sarah Boone's case, if you could drop some sofas down in the comment section so that myself and Luke and Rosco and Spirit has a place to hang out, talk about all these cases that we do talk about here at the Sofa Squad. And until we meander our way on down to that comment section, I'll see y'all soon. I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. Also, if you're looking for merch, be sure to check out my Teespring store. I'll put that up here. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.